All right. Well, greetings, everyone, and welcome back. This is our second general session. Hopefully, you guys have been getting tons of content and great information from all of the previous sessions. Of course, yesterday about the actuarial market trends, followed by that amazing discussion that we had with George Nichols III. And then, of course, the anti-procrastination and getting things done session by yours truly. So once again, Chris Cooper here, and I am super excited to welcome everyone back to our second general session. And this one I'm really excited about because this is a fireside chat with some extraordinary leaders in the organizations. I'm thrilled, as I would say, just to be a fly on the wall for this exciting session. Because it's rare that you have the opportunity to engage with top Black actuaries that are changing the game, rewriting the narrative, and truly implementing and making a profound impact on the profession as well as each other. So I'll begin by introducing our moderator. Then I'm going to introduce each of the panelists, and I'm going to turn it over to our moderator to do her thing. So let's begin first with Miss Simone Walker. She is an actuarial managing director of reserving analytics for CNA Insurance Company, where she leads a team of talented, high technical and analytical actuarial professionals. Her team is responsible for both the advancement of reserving analytics and providing key insights aimed at informing data-driven profitability decisions to business partners in general liability, pricing, underwriting, and claims. Additionally, she plays a pivotal role within the actuarial team at CNA, leading a committee that focuses on increasing morale and recognizing the contributions of actuarial professions. Simone is an associate at ACAS, of course, with the Casualty Actuarial Society, with over 15 years of actuarial experience with leading P&C companies within the insurance industry. She has held various actuarial roles within personal lines pricing, product management, warranty reserving, and commercial lines pricing and reserving. She is a cum laude graduate with a BS in Statistics and Operations Research from the University of Illinois at Chicago, where her passion for leadership development, connecting and assisting others began. She's volunteered and tutored with numerous organizations. She loves spending time with her husband and 3 young children in the Chicagoland area. She enjoys creating new experiences and memories with her family, whether at home or traveling to new and familiar places. So welcome, Simone, everyone.
Thank you, Chris.
I think they're giving you the virtual claps across the world. All right, so I'll introduce our first panelist, Randolph II. I'm so used to calling him Art. Arthur Randolph is a principal and consulting actuary with Pinnacle Actuarial Resources, managing the firm's Atlanta, Georgia office right here where I live. He has been in the insurance industry since 1998 and has been consulting since 2001. Mr. Randolph's consulting career was focused on medical, professional liability, homeowners, workers' compensation, commercial and personal automobile, general liability, and commercial multiple peril exposures. Mr. Randolph provides actuarial consulting to property and casualty reinsurers, self-insured entities, risk retention groups, and captive insurers. His core services include reserving, rate making, risk transfer testing, funding allocations, and developing experience and retrospective rating plans. Mr. Randolph is a member of the American Academy of Actuaries Medical Professionals Liability Committee, the AAA Workers' Compensations Committee, and the Alabama Actuarial Council. He is actively involved with the Association of Government Risk Pools, California Association of Joint Powers Authorities, Captive Insurance Companies Association, CPCU Society, Florida Chamber of Commerce, Insurance Accounting and Systems Association, and of course, the International Association of Black Actuaries and NPL Association. Welcome, Arthur. How are you?
Good, but I appreciate the introduction.
My pleasure. All right, let's move right along. Our next panelist is Miss Sharon Robinson. FCAS MAAA is a Senior Vice President and Chief Pricing Actuary for Zurich North America in Schaumburg, Illinois. In this role, Ms. Robinson is responsible for the pricing function for all of Zurich's commercial and specialty lines business in the US and in Canada. Ms. Robinson is a graduate of the University of Illinois Urbana Urbana, with a bachelor's degree in actuarial science. She is a fellow of the Casualty Actuarial Society and a member of the American Academy of Actuaries. Ms. Robinson is past president and past board member of this amazing organization, the International Association of Black Actuaries. She currently serves on the board of trustees for the Actuarial Foundation. Ms. Robinson was named to the Business Insurance 2020 list of women to watch. Ms. Robinson enjoys sharing her professional experiences to help others in their career journey through mentoring and guest speaking opportunities, particularly to promote awareness of the profession with diverse audiences. And we are so pleased and honored to have her with us today. So greetings, Sharon, and welcome. All right, moving right along, two more to go. We have Miss Erika Schurr as the Chief Actuary and Head of Business Intelligence and Analytics and a member of the senior leadership team of Travelers Canada. She manages a diverse team of actuaries and business intelligence professionals and leads all aspects of the actuarial and analytical function, including pricing, reserving, predictive modeling, and advanced analytics. Erika joined the Dominion of Canada General Insurance Company in 2001 as an actuarial co-op student and worked her way up to chief actuary. What an accomplishment. A position she held when the company was acquired by Travelers in 2013, at which time she was appointed chief actuary of Travelers Canada. She is an expert in her field, a sought-after speaker who participates in many industry panels and an active member of several industry associations and not-for-profit organizations, including the Canadian Institute of Actuaries, Canadian Actuarial Society, Insurance Bureau of Canada, and Property and Casualty Insurance Compensation Corporation. She is a graduate of the University of Waterloo, where she holds a Bachelor of Mathematics degree in Actuarial Science and Statistics. She is also a fellow of the Canadian Institute of Actuaries of the Casualty Actuarial Society. Welcome, Erika.
And I will just add, recently elected to the Casualty Actuarial Society Board of Directors, and just a shout out to all of you that you should vote in the upcoming elections for the CAS board. Your vote counts. So
awesome. Thank you so much. I love the plugs. That's right. Representation matters. And our final panelist is no stranger, of course, to all of us, Mr. Stafford Thomas Jr. He is a senior vice president of life product management and drives the continued expansion, diversification, and enhancement of Lincoln's industry-leading portfolio of life insurance products to meet the needs of new clients in Lincoln's core and emerging markets, while also focusing on the long-lasting relationships with existing clients. His key responsibilities include product development, pricing, and management for Lincoln's individual life insurance and executive benefit products, as well as life business development. Before joining Lincoln in 2018, Stafford held the position of Vice President, Marketing Actuary at Schurr, Global Life Americas, where he managed client reinsurance requests for proposals and built and managed client relationships. Prior responsibilities at Schurr included product development, mass marketing, and financial reinsurance in Latin America. Over the course of his career, Stafford has held executive and actuarial positions at Transamerica Reinsurance, North Carolina Mutual Life Insurance Company, and Cigna. Over the course of his career, Stafford has been a champion for diversity and inclusion for the life insurance industry. He was a founding member and former president of this amazing organization, the International Association of Black Actuaries. Stafford is the executive sponsor for all of Lincoln's business resource groups, which are employee-led organizations focused on advancing Lincoln's diversity and inclusion commitment internally as well as externally. Stafford has been recognized for his accomplishment in business and D&I, including receiving Lincoln's first ever Isaiah Tidwell Leadership Award and being named one of the most influential Black executives in corporate America by Savoy Magazine. Stafford holds a Bachelor of Science degree in mathematics with a concentration in actuarial science from the Florida Agricultural and Mechanical University. He is a fellow of the Society of Actuaries and a member of the American Academy of Actuaries. He is a registered representative of Lincoln Financial Distributors. Stafford is also a board member for the Greensboro Chamber of Commerce. And we are so pleased, as always, to welcome Stafford to the panel as well. So having said that, I said that 5 times real fast. I'm going to turn this over to the amazing Simone. You're in very capable hands, and I look forward to an amazing discussion. It's all yours, Simone.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Chris, so much for the wonderful introduction. I'm also very happy, honored, and excited to be a part of the 2021 IABA annual meeting, Vision Without Boundaries. And how appropriate a title for the meeting, given who we have on the panel today for our fireside chat. I started my involvement with IABA many years ago and have benefited from scholarships, early leadership development through volunteerism, and mentorship by many on this panel. So when I learned of the opportunity to chat with Stafford, Art, Sharon, and Erika, it was an immediate yes for me. The leaders we have in this discussion have paved the way for boundless opportunities and vision for younger Black actuaries, including myself. Given that there are so few Black actuaries compared to the greater population, many of us may not have had the opportunity to work for a Black actuarial executive or to sit with you for an hour and a half and learn about some of the obstacles that you've dealt with and overcome along the way. We really want our members to see themselves in these positions. So let's open up the discussion. Audience participation is welcomed. Please feel free to drop any questions that you have in the Q&A box. We do have someone who's receiving those questions and they'll feed them to me accordingly. But I do have some questions to get us started. So let's dive right on in. I'd first like to ask on the topic of insurance versus consulting. So one of the questions that actuaries think about earlier on in their career, or perhaps throughout, is should I work for a consulting firm or an insurance firm? Art, you have you're one of the few on the panel really who's worked in both environments. So we'd like to get your perspective on a few things that usually come to mind on this topic. One of the first being, is it easier to get through exams if you're with an insurance company, or do you kind of struggle on the consulting side? So I'll let you take over there.
So you're asking me to answer this question for the 190 folks that are on this call. All right, so I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think there's a notion that it's easier to pass exams within the confines of an insurance company versus a consulting firm. For a lot of founded reasons, the structure of the actuarial program may have a little bit more. When I say rigor, I don't mean that there's not actuarial development programs or study programs on the consulting side. The challenge on the consulting side is that we're all at the behest of our clients, and sometimes projects run long, sometimes they run a little bit heavy, which candidly jeopardizes a lot of analysts or consultants' ability to get their study time. So I think there's this notion that it's easier to get study time and by consequence pass exams on the insurance company side. I would tell you my own personal experience sort of bucks that trend. I actually had greater success passing exams when I was on the consulting side. I think insurance gave me too much latitude, too much time to go play video games with my frat brothers or just hang out around Chicago, where I had to be more structured in a consulting firm because time was of the essence. I didn't have a lot of time, which meant that I had to better hone in my time management skills, which enabled me to sort of prioritize client work, exam study, and the like. So, and I think as we get further down this conversation, I think one of the broader themes is that the difference really between consulting and insurance companies is really sort of a life's choice and a personality choice in terms of which one's going to better fit your motivations, what's going to fit better in terms of where you see your career trajectory. But for folks that can deal with a rigid schedule, as well as having to study for exams, that's where I felt greatest success. On the insurance company side, it just wasn't for me. But again, that's a personal element or wrinkle in terms of where I found my success and where I didn't.
So I guess stepping a little bit outside of exams, what about opportunities within, I guess you did kind of mention you've shifted more towards consulting in terms of your preferences. How have the opportunities in the consulting side compared to opportunities when you were in insurance?
maybe let me start from the perspective of again, sort of a preconceived notion that consulting is more entrepreneurial than, say, insurance company side. I would tell you both can be. You know, the difference between consulting and insurance is really the person, not necessarily the structure. Where do you find your opportunities? And it's not so much where you find them, but it's where you create them. I found opportunities and a spirit of entrepreneurialism that suited my taste, where I wanted my career to go on the consulting side. And I think, well, even as I hear Chris sort of give Stafford's background or Erika's background or Sharon's background, I mean, there's a heavy sense of entrepreneurialism that they all capitalized on the insurance company side. You know, if I had to be biased because I did insurance and consulting, what I found was that I had greater success in creating opportunities on the consulting side.
Okay.
There's maybe less friction in terms of progress on the consulting side. Because on the consulting side, again, this is my opinion, this is just based on my own experience, that what really pushed me ahead was my ability to do really good work. In a consulting environment, you don't have as many layers from a hierarchical perspective as an insurance company. So it's not 10 of us maybe garnering for or going after or endeavoring for the same sort of seat, because I can create my own seat. And sometimes that can be sort of a fundamental difference between insurance companies and consulting, because you can't have 5 different chief actuaries, right? Erika can only be the one chief actuary. You can't have 5 of them. So you may have 10 or 15 people that are vying for that same seat. Whereas in consulting, if I'm creating the right opportunities, I'm not concerned about who's in front of me, nor am I really concerned about who's behind me, because I'm bringing everybody along with me.
Gotcha. Yeah, so a strong theme that I'm hearing, Art, is that, you know, you've really been able to navigate your own career path. Erika, let me ask you, how have you been able to navigate your career path?
Well, as it said in the introduction, I kind of worked my way up through the organization to become chief actuary, and part of that, you know, tying into that entrepreneurial spirit. You know, I asked for opportunities. I said yes to a lot of opportunities to, you know, give breadth to my experience, to see different things, figure out what I was good at, and, you know, really went after different things. I didn't necessarily set out to be, you know, chief actuary specifically. I just knew that I wanted to progress in my career and see where it took me. And so I worked towards that. And so, yeah, it was a lot of, you know, saying yes to opportunities, and also asking for those opportunities, just curiosity and drive, and working hard, pushing me to that. So that's kind of how I navigated my career path.
So Erika, so just to follow up on that, so how have you navigated towards mastery? So you're the chief actuary. How do you navigate the things that you may be really good at versus the things that, you know, maybe, you know, could be a potential weakness for you?
Yeah. So being successful in your role, you know, being able to identify your own strengths and weaknesses, and you know, identifying what you're good at and identifying what you need to work on are key. But as you start to progress, you know, up the management chain, I think it's pretty important to make sure that you're building around a team around you that can complement you. You know, we talk about diversity being a benefit, and the real benefit of that is diversity of thought. And that diversity of thought is how you complement yourself. So if you know, you're strong in one area, bring on a diverse team allows the team to be strong. And I think it's really important to be able to get that complementary in your team and in your coworkers. And I think that just helps everybody be successful. You can't be the best at everything. So know your strengths, obviously play them up, but also know your weaknesses so that you can put the right people around you to help you be successful.
That's such good advice. Does anyone else on the panel want to? I think this is really a question, navigating your own career path, that really warrants a lot of different perspectives. So, Stafford or Sharon, would you like to share any of your pearls of wisdom on this topic?
Sure. Thank you, Simone. What I would say is that Art and I share frat brothers, and one of my frat brothers used to say, if you let somebody else tell your story, chances are they're going to tell it wrong. You're better off just telling your own story. I really took that to heart because I think many of us believe that if we just do a good job, if we just work ourselves really well, somebody's going to come tap us on the shoulder and say, it's time for you to get the next position. Mm-hmm. And what I found is that everybody is trying to do a good job, or almost everybody. And everybody's working hard. And so if your manager or leadership can't distinguish you from another hard worker or you from another person that's turning in fantastic work, then chances are you can be passed over for those opportunities. And so I've always encouraged people to speak up and tell your story. Yeah, I'm a person of color, right? I'm a Black guy. So I know we get accused of, oh, he's arrogant. He told your story, he's arrogant. Told your story, somebody, he thinks he's better than what he is. But the truth of the matter is that if you're quiet, you're passed over. If you tell your story, and it's a good story, you got the opportunity to be arrogant in the next position. So if I had to choose between the two, I would certainly choose tell my story and seek those opportunities that afford you when you do.
Thank you. I'll allow opportunity if anyone else wants, before I go to the next question, if anyone else wants to speak up.
Yeah, I'll jump in here also. I would also just add that I think that something that's benefited me is just being patient with myself and patient with the opportunities coming my way. There have been times when multiple times where I've turned down opportunities that gave the appearance of being very attractive, would be great progress, but weren't, that I didn't feel were right for me at the time or place. And I've never looked back and felt like, oh, I blew it, or I should have done that. I've always found that wherever I've said no to something, another opportunity that opened up that was even better and took me in a direction that was what I really wanted, as opposed to what someone was willing to give me. And that takes some patience. It takes some patience to say no to a promotion or an advancement in direction, because you're not sure, well, is the right thing, is the thing that I really want going to come along later. But I think that that's been very important for me personally.
That's a really good point, Sharon, and it brings about another question I have for you, or the panel really. What do you do when you feel like you're ready for a promotion or the next role, or what's the thought process that goes into it, and what if that role is available to you or not? Stafford, did you want to share a little bit on that topic? I know we've talked about that topic in the past.
Yeah, there's certainly, my thought is that generally you'll find yourself prepared for the next role before organizations are prepared for you to have the next role. Mm. And I've also found that you'll either find that next role inside the organization as advancement or outside the organization as opportunity. And either is okay. What you really want to look for in that next role is it going to stretch you? You don't want to go do the same thing that you've always done. Is it going to be a challenge? I've often said, if you're not scared of a new role, then that's probably not the right role for you. Because you really do want roles that'll push you, roles that'll expand your knowledge and those types of things. You've heard people say, hey, maybe I ought to interview for this role. And we see that quite a bit where people will interview for a role that they know they're not qualified. And they do that because they want to put their name on the radar. Yeah, next time, I want to make sure y'all thinking about me when you think about the next person that's going to do that role. And we have seen that more with men than with women. We have a female board member who spoke to our women's leadership group. And what she said is that oftentimes she finds that men will wait till they're 50% qualified for a role before they throw their name in the hat, whereas women will wait till they're 200% qualified for a role before they put their name in the hat. Her experience is not mine, but I thought it was a relevant experience to share, that it is important for you to believe in yourself, but be afraid of the opportunity that you're going in. But for you to be clear that advancement is something that you're looking for and that you're not afraid of, and that when given the opportunity, you're absolutely going to knock it out of the park. So those are some of the thoughts that I have on this topic.
Hey, Stafford, if I can take what you just said and maybe double back to exams, because when I hear you say being prepared, or whether you're 55% prepared for the next position, you hear a lot of folks when they're finished the exams say, I'm done, as if, they don't have to do anything else. They don't have to do anything else from an education perspective, right? But very key and critical to advancement is a certain level of actuarial curiosity. And that begets itself by continuous education. And I don't mean just continuing education that you have to fulfill for the CAS or the SOA, but it's keeping up on industry trends. What's going on in things that are important to, on my end, clients, or on the insurance company side, your external and internal clients. And I think a lot of folks forget that part of creating these opportunities is a continuous element of education and how you go about doing that.
Absolutely.
The comments that you were making, Stafford, about being more self-promoting and willing to kind of go out there and put your name out for something, even if you're not quite ready. I think my communication style is very textbook female. When you look at any kind of studies or observations about gender differences in communication, I am classic, not self-promoting. And years ago, someone gave me some feedback or mentioned something in a conversation about how I came across as just satisfied and to the extent of being complacent about my advancement. And what a kick in the pants it was. And this was coming from another woman, actually. What a kick in the pants that was to hear that comment, because it was so not true internally, but I wasn't projecting that. I wasn't communicating that. I wasn't putting my name in the hat for opportunities. I was sort of letting things come my way. That people will see my work and recognize it, and come to me when there's an opportunity. And it was quite a kick. And I realized, I've got to be vocal. I've got to open up and verbally say it, put it on paper, because people won't just read my mind, right?
That's an excellent point, Sharon. What you mentioned basically is that someone else outside of yourself kind of pushed you along the way. Maybe they saw potential in you and they kind of coached you through what they were seeing, which is a great next topic for us to really talk about. We talked about navigating our own careers, We've talked about promoting ourselves. But really what I'd like to delve into is how have others helped us along the way? Art, I know, again, we've talked in the past on this topic, and you shared some of your experiences about how you benefited from coaching and sponsorship. Do you want to share with the audience some of your experiences in that regard?
Sure. Would it be too presumptuous to say that none of us on this call got to where we are by ourselves and on our own accord, that somebody helped us along the way?
Yeah.
Let me see if I can tie in a couple of key themes so far. I hear Stafford saying, self-promotion, being 55%, ready for a position. And I'll tell you, my first stint in consulting was back in 2001, and I knew nothing about consulting. And it comes to pass, one of my frat brothers, Terry Wright, worked at PricewaterhouseCoopers with me, and Terry really showed me the ropes of consulting. I mean, I'm 3 years out of college, decided to make the leap out of insurance and into consulting. And, I think it took me probably 10 to 15 years later to really realize the impact that he had on my career. Because, for the first time, somewhat for the first time, I was able to partner with somebody that looked like me, which I think alleviated a lot of the tension and concern that I had about how well or how successful I could be in that environment. When I finally, now fast forward 6 years later, I went back to insurance for family reasons, decided that, look, I still got this itch that I got to scratch on the consulting side. And I will admit to you, I couldn't have been partnered with two towering figures in the actuarial community with Ollie Sherman and Mike Poe, because those guys took a chance on me. And if you talk about, somebody seeing something that you didn't see in yourself, Ollie was steadfast that I was ready for consulting. I was ready to become a consultant. It's like, no, I don't even have my ACAS yet, man. And, Ollie saw something in me that I wasn't comfortable either acknowledging in myself. And again, to be under their tutelage for the number of years that I was awe-inspiring. It was educational, but it was also scary because I had to live up to the bar that Ollie and Mike had set. And I think that's when I realized that I've got a responsibility. Whenever I've gotten to the point of my career where I felt like I've arrived, however you define that I've got a responsibility to go back and do the same for folks coming behind us. And I won't necessarily go down the path of talking in terms of mentoring, but if I had to look back and say who were the key individuals that really helped propel my career, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Terry Wright, Ollie Sherman, Mike Poe. I got to say this, but Sharon Robinson and Stafford Thompson. I mean, these were all folks that were instrumental in making sure that I knew where I wanted to take my career and how I was going to get there.
Excellent. So that leads me to my next question on this topic. Did these coaches and sponsors fall in your lap, or did you have to seek them out? Like, how did you develop these relationships?
Well, maybe a shameless plug for IABA, but all of those relationships that I fostered or that were fostered on my behalf, the genesis of them, sort of the common denominator, was really IABA. That's where I met Mike. That's where I met Ollie. And, to be a consultant in that shop, I mean, you had to have your ACAS, which I didn't have at the time. But we kept conversations going. I won't sit here and say that we forged a formal mentor-mentee relationship, but they sort of tracked my career unbeknownst to me, because I was comfortable in telling them where I wanted to be, and they felt it right to help me get to where I wanted to be. So these guys were tracking my navigation from Chicago to Philly to DC, and through IABA we would continue to have conversations, and when an opportunity came up, they thought of me, gave me a call, and next thing I know, I was hightailing it down to DC. And candidly, it was the best decision I'd made in my career.
Excellent. So I wanted to ask, Erika, along the way, have you always had good managers? Are all managers good managers?
Um, it's a loaded question. No, I've actually had the benefit of having some really beneficial managers that believed in me and helped me along my career paths and listen to me when I talked about where I wanted to go and what I wanted to do, and to echo that point that Art was making, I benefited from some really strong mentors and leaders in my own company that really gave me the confidence to get to where I need to be, and help me to find my voice and my confidence in order to be successful as a chief actuary, woman of color chief actuary, quite young too. So, check all the boxes as to why I shouldn't be successful. But they helped me to find my voice, and that's something that I feel strongly about as a manager of a team, is providing that opportunity for all of my directs and my team below me to find their voice, and to I really feel strongly in that the person who does the work should present it. I don't want to take credit for the work that my team did. That there's a reason I hired my team, and they're very good at it, and their success it shows on me. So I think one of the strongest things we can do as a community is to really help other actuaries in that success, to help other actuaries find their voice, and to give them that confidence as managers.
So how have you gone about finding, and this is coming from the audience, how have you gone about finding a mentor or a coach or a sponsor? If you weren't as beneficial, let's say, as Art,
Yeah.
In some of the situations that he mentioned, how specifically have you gone about taking it into your own hands?
So definitely networking, and making those connections. I think it's like everything else, just maybe with the panel I'm the only introvert, but actuaries in general, we're introverts, and so it's hard for us to ask, and you'd be surprised if you approach people and say, I'd like to have you as a mentor. Do you think you have time for a coffee every once in a while? And you'd be surprised, a lot of people are happy to mentor. It's honestly a compliment to be asked to be mentored, and a couple of people have asked me to be mentors, and happy to provide that opportunity. I think as a mentor, I'm now finding that there's a lot of reverse mentorship happening. I learn a lot from these one-on-one conversations that I have with more junior people, either in my organization or more broadly. My company Travelers actually believes really strongly in mentorship and tries to create those mentorship opportunities around the company. But I think that you should network, meet people in the seminars, IABA, CIA in Canada. You get on these committees, you volunteer for these committees, you learn who the leaders in the industry are, and send them a message, and a lot of them will be happy to sit down with you for a coffee.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I actually also work for an organization, CNA, where I think we're pretty good about assigning mentors as well. But I've worked for smaller organizations where maybe that wasn't as much of a focus because the resources weren't there. So I think all the more reason to heed some of your advice, where you may be able to find mentors within your company, but searching outward will be beneficial as well. Skipping topics a little bit, I wanted to talk to Sharon a little bit. So recently, Sharon, you were featured in an article with Zurich that focused on being the only one. Can you share a little bit of your experience about feeling like an outsider?
Yes, but before I do that, I want to share one more thing about this on this topic of mentoring, if I can take a minute for that.
Please, yes.
I've had many people that have influenced my career over the years, but one thing, I've been in some very structured, formal mentoring programs, a couple of them in particular, that were with mentors that were not actuaries. One was in the insurance industry and one was not. She was in financial services, she was in banking, but not anything to do with actuaries or insurance. But they were senior executives, they were leaders, and that experience of working, for each of them lasted formally for a year, but even continued much longer than that. One of them was incredibly impactful. We're actuaries. We work with other actuaries, but we don't work in a bubble with just actuaries. We work with other professionals, and particularly as you're growing and progressing as a leader, there is so much to gain from senior executives, regardless of their discipline. And I really value those opportunities. So I just wanted to make that plug to think about that when you're seeking a mentor, that there may be different people, you get something different from each relationship. And I think there's value in that. On the topic you asked me about, the article that I was recently interviewed for and wrote about my experiences with being an outsider, feeling like an outsider. It's a very kind of a somber topic, right? It's a tough topic, but one that maybe many of us can resonate with. I am very, very conscious of the lack of presence of women and Blacks and Black women in the professional circles that I travel. Especially when I'm in larger meetings, I tend to count the numbers. It's just a habit of mine. And about 20% is typical in meetings that I find myself in with senior leaders. And if you overlay that with my race, I'm typically the only one, or sometimes one of two. I talked about my natural communication style as being very stereotypical of women, that I'm not very self-promoting. I hate to share ideas before they're thoroughly thought through. Sometimes I have a hard time getting a word into a conversation if the other voices in the room are more aggressive than mine. And sometimes my ideas get attributed to other people. And I've found that, especially as I've progressed into higher leadership positions, the most difficult situations are not typically technical actuarial work. My greatest challenges are typically around people, navigating relationships and differing motivations and hierarchies, and trying to influence decisions and trying to stand up for myself. And I've worked at times in environments that weren't particularly inclusive for me as a woman or as an African American, where I've felt very marginalized. So you combine that with my natural communication style, and it definitely affects that relationship side of my work. And I have to push past those kind of dynamics. I've lived in a minority and majority environment my entire life, but I never get totally comfortable that there's always this presence somewhere beneath the surface in an awareness that I'm different, and that creates this special pressure to prove myself. And I think sometimes people see my professional success and assume that I haven't been touched by that, and that's just completely wrong. I've seen salary disparities aligned on gender. I've experienced racist attitudes in the workplace. I've overheard racist comments that were not intended for me to hear. And I've heard things highly offensive that were said directly in my presence by people just totally ignorant or uncaring of their own offensive beliefs. And sadly, I have to say I've been offended so many times that I've learned cautiousness about getting too close to people. And it's just a learned self-defensive mechanism. And some of the most difficult situations, and I talked about it in the article that I was interviewed for, tend to be with work colleagues. Those difficult situations with work colleagues can come in more social interactions that are actually supposed to be there to build closer working relationships. You go out for lunch or dinner or drinks, or you're at a reception, and there I am, always the only one or the one that's different. And in those kind of social settings, people start relaxing and they start talking about subjects that might not come up in a more formal business meeting, right? And things slip out that you wouldn't otherwise hear. People start sharing what they might think is a lighthearted story, or they may ask me questions that just clearly show a lack of understanding of the experience of Black people. Or I may find myself in a conversation that's not really offensive, but it's not inclusive either, where I just don't feel I can participate because my life experience or interests are so different that I just don't relate, and it's just too difficult or too exhausting to try to jump into the conversation and explain my perspective. And I, all these years, I'm still really not good in those kinds of situations. I never seem to have the right words to respond in a moment when someone says something offensive, especially if it's in the presence of a group of people. And I often just kind of absorb the blow and push through it or address it at a later time, one-on-one. And in one particularly egregious situation, I wrote a letter to the people involved, just to respond to what was said and not let it just slip away. So what happens, in all of this is that I don't build the same kinds of relationships that my coworkers are building sometimes. And I can be seen as very reserved or aloof or all business. And that tends to just only heighten the stress that I might feel to prove myself in my work. So navigating those kind of challenges, I may be uncomfortable in those environments, but I am very comfortable with who I am. And I've learned to do my job very effectively anyway. But I know, as any of us, I'm not operating at my best under those kinds of circumstances.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Sharon. I personally have received similar feedback to loosen up at work. And I think folks don't realize how hard that can be because of some of the things that you mentioned, kind of feeling like the only one, or, just kind of feeling like, okay, if I loosen up too much, I might expose myself to comments or things that I don't know how to deal with, or I don't want to deal with because it might make me look bad, or whatever the reason is. So thank you for sharing that. And I wanted to kind of open it up for anyone else on the panel who wants to share any of their experiences.
Yeah, Sharon, that was extremely powerful. What I would tell you is that certainly there's some cultural differences that not everybody recognizes that is worth noting, and we've talked about it at Lincoln. The cultural norm is that you can fight at work, and then at 5 o'clock, everybody go get a drink. Well, for us, if I fight with you at work, I don't want to see you for a week and a half, right? So just understanding how different experiences and different cultures really impact people is extremely important, and not something that our corporations do very well. And I do find us needing to help them understand and saying outright, listen, this is how that stuff impacts. And so don't be surprised when the next time you ask for questions, people say, I don't know if I want to speak up for you right now. This going to lead to something that you don't want to go there, and I don't want to go there with you. So we have one person that said, folks talking to me like they want to step outside, you know. And so just kind of understanding those things is extremely important as we navigate this environment. But there's a conversation going on today. Sharon talked about uncomfortable conversations. You find yourself in situations talking about what's happening in the Olympics and what's happening in gymnastics with Simone Biles, and there's so many different perspectives there that those types of conversations can get sideways really, really quick. But as I think about people trying to advance in their career, one of the questions in this post-George Floyd world is, did you get promoted just because you were Black? And we interesting had a debate on that last night. And the perspective I wanted to share was this. There are so many people that haven't gotten promoted just because they were Black. That the conversation went around, oh, well, I'm not sure they're a good fit. Or, oh, I'm not sure they have the right relationships in order to really do this role. And we've experienced that from 1619 to now. And so to see the opportunities that people are getting that look past those barriers is exciting to me. I certainly hope it's a permanent change that, maybe we ought to give some folks a shot. Yeah, they might not have been our definition of a good fit, but let's see what some folks got. And so it's become interesting. I've heard many of us say, hey, I want to be looked at and somebody say I got this promotion because I did a good job or because I was qualified to get it. And we all want that. But the piece that I think is different is that far too often, and it may not be fixed, right? I know Barack Obama was president of the United States and now everybody thinks racism is dead. It may not all be fixed, but certainly having race not be as big a barrier to promotion as it has been in the past is exciting for me to watch. And like I said, I hope it's something that's going to be lasting as opposed to temporary.
I knew you would preach for us today, Stafford. Thank you. Anyone else want to talk on this topic? This is a good topic to gain perspective.
Hey, Simone, let me go back to Sharon's article because I think there's no way that couldn't have resonated with a lot of folks. And it evoked a lot of, I'll say, negative feelings for me in terms of some of the things that I've had to navigate around in my career. In my workplace environment, and I want to be clear about how I describe that, I see it as being diverse, whether it's along gender lines, race lines, sexual orientation, and the like. But when I step outside of Pinnacle's offices, I don't see anybody that looks like me. When I go do presentations to industry crowds, it might be 200-300 people, and I hear Sharon say that she can count 20%. I can't count one. And it's a struggle because you just don't know how those folks are perceiving you, your level of expertise. Are they giving you full credit for your expertise, or are they haircutting it because you just can't know it that well? I've been in board meetings where I've had, board members come up to me afterwards and say, "You're really articulate."
Yep.
And it takes a lot of restraint for me to stay inside of my professional coat, because my first inclination is as opposed to what? There's places, most of my clients are in urban centers, but there's oftentimes there might be a board retreat that's, down in the sticks somewhere. And candidly, I don't feel comfortable because while I feel like I should be able to go anywhere I want to, that's not reality. My coworkers that go with me could feel comfortable, but I can't. The hurdle is, how do you get some of that out of your psyche to still be the professional and the actuary that you are? And a lot of it's sort of a mental game that I have to play with myself, that if I make a big deal out of the fact that I look different from everybody in that crowd, then it's going to be more of an issue than what it needs to be. But I mean, literally out of my entire client base, I've got 2 Black clients. So even at a leadership level, it's still a struggle to find folks that look like you, and folks that will accept you for who you are and not think that somehow, to Sharon's point or to Stafford's point, that you didn't earn your way there, that somehow somebody gave you a chance or let you do it when probably you didn't deserve it. And that's still very real and palpable today.
Art, I can remember, excuse me, number of years ago, I gave had to give some testimony to a state legislature committee, excuse me, on an insurance topic. And it was an environment like that, right? I'm an African-American woman. Here I am, professional, well prepared, delivering this testimony to a body of people in a state, and a profile of people that were totally, not like me, not one in the group. And it was, I remember it very well because I'm sitting there, I'm delivering this, I can see their faces, I can see their reaction. And it was, they were just, that you could hear a pin drop for one. They seemed in shock. Really was the look on their faces. They seemed in shock to be seeing and hearing from someone like me speaking before this body in an articulate manner. And I know exactly what you're talking about.
But I want to be careful because I know that what I just said in Sharon's example could be really bleak and maybe even discourage some of the folks that are on this call. And that's not the intent. I think really the takeaway is it can be done. It is being done. But let's not lose sight of some of the challenges that are going to be in front of us that are going to be pervasive for quite some time. So it can be done. I think that's what, so I don't want anybody to walk away with sort of this negative, well, let me just throw my hands up because it's not going to happen. Sharon's navigated it. I continue to navigate it to today. And I think as we share those stories, I think it'll give folks an understanding of that it can be done and that there are ways to do it.
And that IABA is here to support you.
That too.
So when we talk about the topic of intersectionality of diversity, we have Sharon and Erika. You're both members of the CAS, or associated now. You're a board member, Erika, reclaiming you. Where at least in the CAS, it was recently reported in an infographic that there's less than 40 Black women that are credentialed members. And add to that, you're both mothers and executives. Personally, I'm a mother of 3, I'm an actuarial leader, and I'm also a member of the CAS. So I would love to hear how you've managed or how you continue to manage climbing the corporate ladder with the title of mom.
Who's going to go first? So I'm a new mother. So my daughter turns 1 next week. So COVID baby, and it has been a bit of a whirlwind. People tell you that children change your life, and you kind of know that, but you really don't understand that until you have a kid of your own and then need to manage. I'm actually pretty impressed with Simone because the discipline it would take to be a leader, be dedicated to your work, the hours you need to put into pass exams, and then have that competing with being a mother as well, kids take time. And I'm really starting to appreciate that fact. But it is like anything. I'm learning to prioritize, my daughter along with everything else, and manage time. And I think we talked about it earlier, saying no to some things and saying yes to the right things, and really being selective with your time and energy. Really interested in a lot of these, there was a book recently read called Deep Work, so how to be more efficient at your job, so still putting in those hours and balancing. But I think that COVID actually has, as much as it has thrown the world into disarray, and sometimes it takes a catalyst to make some change and some progress. I mean, you mentioned George Floyd, and I think that was a catalyst. I think COVID has been a catalyst to really open people's eyes to work-life balance, to allowing mothers to be able to manage their kids and their work, and giving people that opportunity to prove that they can do both with a little bit of flexibility. I think COVID, to take something positive out of it, has actually been really beneficial for helping people achieve that work-life balance, in really challenging times.
I agree, Erika. I came up in a time, I was raising my children at a time when this remote flex work environment was not the norm at all. And I remember after my children were born, and I felt I went back to work way too soon. And I went back with the attitude that I was going to prove to everyone that nothing in my life had changed. I was the same person, I was the same employee, I was on the same path, everything was the same. And it was just ridiculous. And it was kind of grounded in this false choice that I thought that I had. And I found very quickly that I couldn't live like that. And I started making changes in my approach to my work, and including stepping up and asking for an arrangement where I was working from home on a regular basis. And that was that was not the norm at the company that I was at the time. That was very unusual, and there was a lot of stigma attached to it. But it's what I needed to navigate my life. And I did it very successfully. And eventually my husband started doing the same thing, and we would alternate days to help, with the care for our children. And, now it's great that there's been just a softening of attitudes around that this parenting and work-life balance, or it might be caring for an elderly parent, or caregiver for anyone, that's not just a women's issue. And just a recognition of that is great to see. But I think also it's very, very important to be grounded in your priorities and what you value, and to just have the confidence to stick with that. And I wish I could say that I always got the choices right. I haven't. I have decisions that I regret, where I stayed at the office too long, or I got on that plane and took that business trip when I should have stayed home. But I've learned from those, and I just have to set my own boundaries, because nobody else is going to do it for me. I have to know what's important to me and set those boundaries.
Yeah, I think you know, the phrase is, you know, to have it all, right? You know, and it's not about having it all. It's about having what you want, right? And
Yeah.
so, you know, if you know your family is important to you, you prioritize that and you fit that in, and something else has to give, but that's the choice you make. And I do think you can, you know, find your path, and that'll bring you happiness. Just understanding that no one has it all, but people have, you have what you have chosen, and so, you know, I truly believe in that nuance, that it's about, you know, making your choice and feeling comfortable with that choice.
Yeah, and I know that my career is different because of the choices and the sacrifices that I've made for the sake of my family. But I also know that my family is different or could be different because of the sacrifices and choices that I might make for the sake of my job. And it's just a tightrope you walk, and just, you know, being grounded in what's most important and prioritizing, and living with those choices is important.
That's a great point, Sharon. Yeah, the opportunities that your family is potentially granted because of the strides that you've made in career. It's a balance with between that and the guilt, right? So thank you for sharing those thoughts. I do have a few audience questions that I'd like to throw at anyone who wants to answer. Here's a question: does the panel feel they're always having to prove themselves or be on?
I'm
Yes.
going to say no. Yeah, but Sharon, you go first.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, so I there are situations where, you know, you're presenting to a board, and you know, you have to present your best foot forward. You're representing your company. You know, this is, you know, a key, and it's pretty easy to identify what those situations are. But if you don't find a way to relax at work, and be able to, you know, we do the Gallup survey, have your best friend at work, have someone that you can, you know, relate to, and just relax. You spend a large amount of your time working. And so if you don't find a way to relax and enjoy your work environment, you know, you're going to burn out. So I'm not always on with my team, but, you know, definitely know when I need to put that professional step forward, and also know when I can relax a bit, you know, and I think being a little bit relaxed allows some of your team to relax around you, and I think just creates a better work environment. So I'm going to say no. You don't always need to be on.
I see smiles. Anyone else want to offer perspective?
I'll just say, I think that's awesome, Erika, and I think great advice as well. I think that underlying pressure just, it doesn't leave me. I think I manage it well. I think I try very much to not let it rattle me, or, you know, but it's just always kind of there below the surface.
Yeah, I'm gonna side with Sharon on this one. It's not that I'm siding against Erika. I mean, I mentioned earlier about sort of the difference between insurance and consulting, and some of it is a life's choice, some of it is personality driven. But I can't get away from this motivation to continue to succeed. You know, rightly or wrongly, I mean, part of the motivation is I've had people in front of me that blaze the trail, and I don't quibble about it. That Sharon has been one of those people for me. Stafford has definitely been one of those people for me. And there's an overwhelming sense of fear of failure that I often have, whether that's within my own workshop, whether that's in front of my clients, that I can't turn that switch necessarily off. Now, I take Erika's point where you got to have work-life balance. So it can't necessarily always be on. But I'm also sort of trying to run away from this ghost of sort of who I am, right? Like I've always got this, again, overwhelming sense of having to prove that I'm successful because of my credentials and what I've achieved, and not because I'm Black, or I haven't succeeded because I'm Black. So it sort of keeps that switch on. I mean, my wife does a pretty good job of forcing me to turn it off. But just on a regular basis, it's just on, but manageable.
Yeah, and I support all of the positions. I do try to have fun at work, but I got to admit that while I'm joking at work, I wonder, am I joking too much? And are people thinking that it's buffoonery as opposed to just fun, enjoying what you do? And so it certainly is a balance. We've got rules in my group of if you break it, fix it. And because of that, I don't worry too much about breaking it or too much about making a mistake, because if you break it, you fix it. A lot more difficult to do if you're talking about presenting in front of a board. You just don't have as many opportunities to fix it. And a lot different than when you're talking in front of the president of the company. You just don't have as many opportunities to fix it. But outside of that, I've never really worried about making a mistake. I have enough faith to believe that 90% of the stuff I'm gonna say is gonna be correct. The other 10 is crap. But so what? You break it, you fix that. I was wrong on that one. My bad. Yeah. Here we go. So yeah, it's tough because you do feel that pressure to succeed. HR often talks about, oh, don't worry, this is a safe space. What the hell is I ain't met one of those at work because somebody's just always watching. And so from that standpoint, I certainly do feel those pressures that Sharon and Art talked about, but I also make it a point to have fun. To Erika's point, we do so much at work and we work so much that if you're not enjoying it, and I don't think that that's what Sharon or Art were saying, that they don't enjoy it. I think they absolutely enjoy and love what they're doing. Art made a huge point. We're sharing with you our experiences and some of our innermost thoughts, because far too often in the past we didn't. And folks assume that, oh, that didn't impact them. They made it to the top. They didn't go through nothing like what we're going through right now. They never failed an exam. Art never failed an exam. Look, he a principal at Pinnacle. He couldn't have failed an exam. And we don't talk enough about some of the things that we went through as we climbed to these so-called positions of senior leadership. And so we wanted to make sure that we were as open, as transparent, that, yeah, we've had fun now, we've done well. Chris Cooper read the bios, are the best consultant that ever lived. Sorry, Roosevelt, sorry. Sharon, best chief actuary in the US, Erika, best one in Canada. We've done those things, and those things are easy to see. It's understanding some of those things that we felt, that we thought, that we experienced as we climbed up this way, that we just really wanted to make sure that you guys had an intimate picture so that you know that you can make it.
I'm sorry. Stafford, let me jump in because you're touching on an audience question that that I think is in line with what you're sharing. So maybe you can kind of gear your answer towards that, or anyone else. So do you think the barriers for Black actuaries are different depending on the stage of career? Entry level versus mid-career? And if so, what do you think is the most overwhelming barrier to overcome at any stage? Anyone, feel free to chime in. I just thought, Stafford, you were kind of setting me up to ask that question real nicely.
I'll offer something just to get the conversation started. I do think that it's as you enter your career, you know, you're learning and you don't necessarily have that confidence. You haven't had a mentor inspire you. You haven't, you know, and so that hesitation. You know, I think that there are different barriers when you're first entering the workforce versus, you know, after you have have climbed the corporate ladder a bit, and you know, there's still barriers. It's just different. You know, we talked a lot about seeing ourselves, you know, around the table. You know, I've actually been fairly lucky in that the senior leadership team at Travelers Canada has actually been quite heavily female. You know, close to 50% at times, and you know, I think that that's very different from some other people who have to still break through that that barrier as a woman or as a woman of color. So I do think the barriers are different at each stage, but I don't think the barriers go away as you progress in your career. Does that make sense?
It does.
You know,
All
I
right.
actually struggled with how to put some of that into context, and had to go back to think about where that individual might be in their career at that time. I think it goes without saying that, you know, exams are going to be a barrier if you're an analyst, right? Or if you're new to the career field. Where driving your career is going to be an additional barrier. But I can't say that I've got real sage advice in terms of how different those barriers are going to be. I agree with Erika. I mean, the barriers are still going to be there. But I want to maybe come back and maybe not so much answer the question, but encourage folks that have achieved some level of success in their career, however you define success, that you've got to be willing and take it personally to turn back around and make sure that you're bringing folks behind you forward. I mean, I think that there's almost a responsibility for all of us that have been successful. Like I said, I can sit here and give a laundry list of people that have been extremely impactful in my career. And to me, it'd be awfully selfish if I wasn't turning around and doing the same thing for folks behind me. So I can't speak to specific barriers, but I would hope that conversations like this, just the very notion of IABA, helps folks navigate some of those barriers so they aren't as steep as they were for maybe, you know, the four of us or for the folks that came before us.
Excellent. So, you know, we can still reasonably count the number of credentialed Black actuaries. So the fact that, you know, all of you have made it to where you are is, simply put, tremendous. Are there any words of wisdom that you can impart on the audience on navigating their careers, as many of our members, again, don't have the opportunity to maybe hear it directly from Black leaders within their organizations?
There's a few things that I would share. I'll jump in. One, I think somebody said this just a minute ago. I think I genuinely love my work. And you can't fake that, right? You can be successful at something you're lukewarm about, but I think it makes a world of difference if deep down you come at things from a stronger place than that. I love learning. I love problem solving. I love a challenge. I love working in positions of influence. And I would have a real hard time pushing past all the pressures and challenges that we've been talking about for the last hour if I didn't truly want to be in this business. So I think that's been really important to me and the success that I've had. The other thing, you know, and particularly for leaders, people that are moving towards wanting to be in the leadership positions, I genuinely care about people. And you can't fake that either. I believe that the strongest leaders really care about the people they're leading. And I care deeply about having a positive impact on the development of people and helping people achieve their goals. And I talked a lot about just being grounded in my values and my priorities, and knowing what's important to me and trying to live accordingly. And for anybody in any profession, I think that's really important. Something else I thought about that has been particularly impactful for me is just learning to embrace change. And that was learned for me, and not just tolerating change, but truly embracing and even initiating change. That can be organizational change, that can be management changes, technology changes, market changes, whatever. You may find that the job you thought you were getting turns out to not be what you wanted. The person that you thought you were going to be working for may leave the company, or the product that you just loved working on gets discontinued. And you can't do anything about that. You know, a change is just a fact of life. And you have to learn how to immediately ask yourself, how can I succeed in this new place I find myself in? Where can I lead? And then just move forward from there. And a couple of other things, if I can keep going, is I've learned to be okay with being uncomfortable in my work. I think this came up earlier as well, that it's okay to not always know what the solution is or what to do in every situation. It's okay to be in the midst of ambiguity and deal with that, and to try not to let that rattle you, but you know, at least not outwardly. That you know, that's okay. And in fact, if I'm in a place where I'm not in, where I do think I've got a solution to everything, it's probably a sign that it's time to move on and, you know, and do something else. And then lastly, I just say I've also learned the importance of just really being comfortable in my own skin, literally, and confident that I belong and have a right to the seat at the table, even when the environment around me might not feel so inviting. So, you know, you need to look around and think about, where do you draw your encouragement from? Because it might not be the people at the conference table every day. You know, you've got to be able to find that within yourself, that confidence and encouragement.
Thank you so much, Sharon. Would anyone else like to share their pearls of wisdom?
You know, after hearing Sharon say all that, I'd almost like to just end the call right now and leave on that note. I'll be quick, because I really, man, I wish we really could end on what Sharon said. Sharon had given some characteristics of actuaries, you know, being introverts, maybe not being self-promoting. I'll add another one, that actuaries tend to be risk averse, and to really develop your career, wherever you want it to be, you have to take risk. You have to be willing to step outside of to Sharon's point, outside of your comfort zone. The other fundamental thing that I, if I take a look back on my own career, was just building those networks, not a mentor, 5 or 6 mentors, realizing that mentors will serve a purpose. The mentor that you had when you were an analyst isn't the same mentor that you need when you're 15 years into the career. Into your career field, but I still sort of harken back to some of the conversations that I've had with my mentors. So even though I may not be in touch with them, they left a lasting impression on me, because that's what I needed at that time. But I got there by building a very vast network. You know, I mean, I won't get all into exams, but, you know, Stafford almost single-handedly saved my career. So when he said earlier that, you know, people look at what we've all accomplished and think that we got there easy, we didn't. It certainly wasn't the path of least resistance, but Stafford being part of my network allowed my career to get where probably he knew it needed to be. Maybe I didn't know it at the time, but Stafford was who I needed at that moment in time. And that's how we all should be thinking about the mentors and the folks that we leverage and lean on.
Thank you so much, Art. I know we have a couple minutes. We started on time, and I'm determined to end on time as well. Stafford, do you have anything quickly you want to share? You got like a minute.
Yeah, real quick. Get involved in things, not just your work, but even outside of your daily duties, whether it's diversity, whether it's on United Way or those types of campaigns. That's how leaders get a chance to see you, and then they start to take an interest in your career. Hey, I know you on United Way. What do you do for us in real life type of thing? I found that to be extremely beneficial. And even with IABA, I could go back and say, I've only managed 2 people in my job, but I've been president of an organization of 200 or 100 at the time. So I've got management experience. Give me a chance. So get involved.
Thank you. Erika, any closing remarks?
I'll just echo that, and just something Art said about being risk averse. The slogan of the Canadian Institute of Actuaries is that we quantify risk. So, measure it, take that chance, know what you're doing. So it's not necessarily, there's always risk. It's about managing it. So take that leap of faith. It's probably going to be successful. So. And if not, like Stafford said, you probably can fix it. So.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Erika. I'm going to close this out. This has been a pleasure for me. As I said, you all have been mentors to me throughout my career. I want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart, on behalf of myself and on behalf of folks that you've mentored along the way that are listening in the audience. Again, I'll thank everyone and turn it back to Chris so he can take us home.
Awesome. Well, thank you once again. I wanted to thank you, Simone. Thank you, Art, Sharon, Erika, Stafford, etc., everyone for a powerful conversation. As we said, these moments where you get a chance to get this much transparency and authenticity is very rare. So I hope, the phrase I said at the beginning, I told you so, just be a fly on the wall during this conversation that can literally change the trajectory of your career, your life, and everything else in between. So I'm so excited at all the gems, that Art and Sharon and Erika and Stafford dropped, from telling your own story to doing your work and going above and beyond to finding your fit, to something that Art said, which was so powerful, as well as Stafford. It can be done, and it's being done. Understanding the importance of being grounded, embracing that change, and understanding the only thing that we can bet on is that things are absolutely going to change. Being comfortable with it's okay to not be okay, but it's not okay to stay that way. Also, the power of building networks and the importance of identifying mentors and sponsors, getting involved, and of course, positioning yourself always to learn, to grow, and to be challenged. And as everyone said, I'll say it in the words of from Coming to America, when Prince Hakeem was on the was on the train, and his lady friend was not going to marry him. The lady said, "Take a chance, honey, take a chance." So I hope that everybody definitely takes a chance and pushes past that risk adversity and makes some awesome and incredible things happen. So thank you all for an amazing session. As I said, I have tons of notes like everybody else. And that brings us to the close of day 2. This has been such a phenomenal day, filled with lots of nuggets, lots of information, and the party's not over. We're coming back tomorrow at 3 p.m. And this is actually really important. I know that Sharon mentioned the importance of both structured mentor programs that may be in the actuarial field or in the insurance field, et cetera, as well as those outside of it. So we have an amazing speaker tomorrow that's going to speak from the McKinsey Black Leadership Academy. That's going to be at 3 p.m. So make sure you tune in. He's going to tell us all about that particular program and what they've been doing with leaders, especially post George Floyd and all that kind of great stuff. In addition to that, I'm going to close things out tomorrow at 4 p.m. With a session on It's a Different World. And I'm going to talk about some post-COVID strategies to win in and outside of the office. And of course, announce where we will be next year in person. And not the virtual effect that we have this year. So that does it, guys. Once again, I implore you, I encourage you, go back, listen to this. You didn't hear everything the first time. This will be posted on the YouTube site, and the information is going to be available to you. Kate's going to mail it out and all that kind of great stuff. But keep the curiosity going. I think that's one of the themes of this conference throughout the last couple of days is remain curious and ask questions, and we all can learn and grow and develop together. So thanks again, everybody. Have a wonderful evening, and we'll see you tomorrow at 3 p.m. God bless everyone. Good night.